Yeah, I love talking about Joy Hour. It is a great event we do, and it's spreading across the country. The Joy Hour is creating a culture of connection. In a sober environment, we have all kinds of events and activities, but it really is creating a culture of connection. Our focus is addiction prevention, also addiction recovery, mental health, hope, and healing through connection. If you'd like to get involved, please go to theconsiderategroup.com/Joy Hour.
So excited for the Joy Hour podcast today.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine, Rob, here. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. No,
this is cool.
Exciting, and so thankful for what you've been working on, and we're working together on in a way. We met about a year ago, give or take.
Yeah.
It feels like in some of our conversations, it feels more like a relationship that's been there for a lot longer. I mean that sincerely. The other day I called you, we were talking about a construction project that you have going on, and us being a contractor, so that was kind of the purpose of the call. And I think it was 15 or 20 minutes later, we talked about multiple things, and I got off the phone like, I just feel encouraged. And we'd shared about the economy this year and some business things, and then we talked about relationship. And one of the things that stuck with me there, you said, was, how a lot of business deals that happen in our world are transactional and not as much relational. And that was something that really stuck with me as I'm talking to people about who we are, what we do. And I know today we'll touch on many different topics. I guess we'll start out, though, Rob, with how and where did we first meet, you and I?
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having me. This is pretty cool. So we met through a mutual friend, Gerald Smiley. And he and I met and became basically based on the conversations we have, the depth of the conversations, it's not a superficial type of conversation. And so he's like, hey, you got to check this out. This is what he's doing. This is what Tom's doing. And so I'm like, yeah, absolutely. It's a passion of mine to, ingrain myself in the communities that we serve. Because without our community, we're nothing. We do. My wife and I do mortgage, home loans, help people with home ownership. But we have to make sure not everyone's going to be our client, right? Not everyone's going to be able to afford a home, but we've had enough stuff happen in our life that we realize that there's a need other than just the transaction piece of it that you kind of touched on. But yeah, so Gerald's like, hey, it's Wednesday. Why don't you come check it out? And then introduced me to you, and you spent some time with me, and it was to your point, like, I feel like when you lead with your heart, which you are, the conversations are very authentic, and I can sniff through the BS side of it, and there was nothing that was disingenuous. Everything was, you were honest, you were speaking from your heart, and you were sharing your experience, and I saw what you were doing. I physically saw what you were doing. There was probably 80, 90, 100 people in your warehouse, in your office, all there for various reasons, but with the idea of, hey, we're gonna have this connection. And so at that point I was all in. I already saw who you were, because you led with, you were vulnerable. You said, this is what happened, this is why I started it, and this is why we need it. Cool, how can I help? So and I feel like those relationships, when we start out that way, based on leading with that, it feels like they're they've been around a lot longer than the superficial, how can we work business-wise? How can we work transactionally? And this is like, no, how can we help with your purpose and your goals and achieve all these other things? The business side will kind of take care of itself, which obviously you are helping me with a project. You've helped me in the past with a project. And everything that you said has always been 100% accurate and true. So, it's,
I was thinking back to the first couple of Joy Hours, and you've been to quite a few, you and your wife and your kids, and really appreciate that. But the first couple that you came to, I just had this thought as you were talking. I remember, because there's 50, sometimes 150 people there, and I'm the golden retriever. I want to say hi to everybody, and especially the ones in the room that might not feel yet like they fit or welcomed. I run right to them. Hey, how are you doing? Have you tried the pizza? That's just what I've always had a call to do. I think I grew up with knowing what that awkward feeling was like. I was always, chubby and turned beet red, embarrassed. So I would be that one that was socially uncomfortable when I was a younger teenager and everything. So anyhow, I go to a lot of those people. And I always noticed the first couple times with you, there was this observational view that you had of looking at what was going on. Of course, you interacted, you talked to many different people. There's a couple times I looked over and it looked like you were just taking it all in. And I'm learning you a little bit, going, I wonder what he's thinking. I wonder what this is all about to you. And then as I got to know you more, and then I heard you speak at a few different events about Joy Hour, I was like, wow. Thinks that's awesome. I love hearing somebody else's perspective about what we do. And when I first started Joy Hour, it was because I don't do happy hour and I don't drink anymore and I'm in recovery. A very simple concept. But as it's blossomed and it's touched a lot of other people's lives, I've asked, what does it mean to you? And that common thread has been, it's a community that truly cares about each other, that's engaged, listens, loves. And there's something different there. And we miss that building that we had. We're now at the park, and it's great. We meet a ton of people every time we do it. But something about it attracted your attention, not just from a participant point of view, but from a, what's going on here? And then you, on your own, without me asking, have taken it on yourself to tell others about it. And that's what I think is the beauty of it, is I would have never met you without Gerald telling you about it. I probably just wouldn't. It's a big world, big population. But when you find something good and you share it with somebody else saying, hey, check this out, it might mean something to you or your family or whoever. And so I want to continue to cast the vision that although Joy Hour is all about addiction prevention, addiction recovery, it's about mental health, hope, and healing. It's really about creating that culture of connection in people that really care enough about each other to say, actually, I don't want to know what you do for a living first. That's not my first question. If we get to that, we get to that. I'd like to know who you are. How you doing? Where'd you grow up? Again, how are you doing? Are you doing all right? You need a hug? Come bring it in, bro. And we do a lot of that, of real tears, real laughter, real like, hey, I'm concerned. I'm asking how you're doing today. And, I've seen you do that with people. You can do it verbally, you can do it physically. But later down the conversation, you might say, oh, what do you do for a living? That's kind of what you and I did. It was like, oh, I do mortgages. Okay, great. And since then, I've done one for my mom. You've done one for other friends. I've done a couple projects for you. Hey, that's all great. That's what keeps food on the table, and it works out. I mean, that's what funds. Considerate Contracting's had a huge passion for funding Joy Hour. Movement Mortgage funds all kinds of programs schools, right, and all kinds of things. I've heard number one impact lender, right? That's huge. Yeah. And I'd like you to speak on that for a minute. I think that's the type of people that I wanted to continue to do business with are ones that are in it to cover the bills, make a buck, maybe make a couple. Nothing wrong with that. But what else do you do with the surplus? Right. When you have surplus of resources or surplus of time, it's not always finances, but of time, you have that surplus of time to listen to somebody at the coffee shop and you engage with them, you don't know, but you might have saved their life by that surplus of time going into their day to listen to what they're going through. Or sometimes a surplus of finances to support a great cause like, Movement Mortgage does and, what Joy Hour does. And there's a few others that I know you're involved with that are very impactful. Mission Outdoors is awesome. And, a couple others that I go into. But that giving and that volunteer service part of you, I think everybody's born with it. But sometimes we get distracted and lose our way with hey, it's not all about us. And if it is, it's kind of a dead-end road. It's just a matter of when you get to the dead end At what age do you get to the dead end and go, that wasn't success? I ran as fast as I could to that bright and shiny thing at the end called $1 billion, called a Mercedes, called a Lamborghini, called a house, whatever. Nothing wrong with some of those things. But what's the end part of that? I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I think what brought us together so quickly was there's a common thread in we work hard, but we got a reason for that, and it is to kind of be old school, to be relational and not just transactional. So I've enjoyed a bit of that.
Yeah. What I saw, back to what you're saying, like I'm observing. Right? So I'm in a position where I have the ability to lead. And that's not leading a financial institution through, this market and a real estate market or lead a construction company through this market. It's the servant leadership, and that's what I saw there.
Right.
And I realized when I started my journey that I can't do it alone, and I don't want to do it alone. So what I saw at Joy Hour was essentially leadership. I saw you leading the community through being vulnerable, not this, look at me, I'm better than you, look at me, I'm in the trenches with you. I almost lost all of this, right? You were very vulnerable. And so when I see that, that's leadership in my opinion, because you're leading with, you're vulnerable enough to where like, hey, I want to help you. I've gone through this. I know what that feels like, what that tastes like, what that sounds like and looks like, right? I mean, it's in the trenches, right? And that's where life happens. That's where change happens, and that's where hope and help will eventually happen as well. To answer that, it was leadership that I saw, and I knew very early on as I'm watching this that okay, you're in alignment with where I'm at and where I'm going, and so how do we now lead together, right? And so Gerald, going back to Gerald, like that introduction, he's a leader. Yeah. Right. And he has missions and he wants to change the world. And he's got a ton of things in the works. And I love him for that. Right. He's been successful in his life with, athletics and everything else. But it doesn't matter. I see him who he is as a man. Right. And because he and I became friends really, like I said earlier, very quickly because he was vulnerable with me. He shared what had happened. And we have very similar situations with our, loved ones that are no longer with us. So when I see that, and I've met a handful of people that have that servant leadership, it's very easy for me to like, okay, I'm all in because I see it because I'm in that world. Transaction wise, yeah, we have to close loans. We have to help people get into homes. Because that's how we pay the bills. That's how we, our oldest is in college now. So yeah, we all need to make a living, but we're not focusing on the transactions. We're focusing on the relationships, and the relationships will lead to transactions because we're building trust and they see what our mission is and what our goals are. And so, you mentioned Movement Mortgage, being an impact lender. We give back almost 50% of our profits to the communities that we serve. We're not owned by, shareholders. We don't have shareholders. We're majority owned by a foundation. And so those profits go back, and we have 5 charter schools up and going. We've pledged to do 100. We have Grace Work, they call it Grace Works grants. A couple times a year, it's $1 million that we send out $10,000 grants to 100 501c3s that are doing right in the community. Everyone throws a name in a hat across the country and goes up for a vote. Your name isn't there last time, so we came up a little bit short, but we have a next round coming up, so you'll be back in there, so hopefully. But it's very much in line with who I am and and I work with my wife, so what we want to do and what we want to contribute, we want to have that impact and take it to heart. So it's very easy for us to find when we see someone like you and meet someone like you, where it's like, yeah, I feel like we've known you forever because the trust is built that much faster.
Right.
So yeah, it's been impressive, and I feel like opportunities, they come up when they need to come up, and like having the opportunity to talk about this in this environment, in this room on a podcast is actually really cool.
Yeah.
We would have talked about this a year ago and like, there's no way, but there's just opportunity. So I feel like, things happen for a reason. And like when I met Gerald, is literally like he sat down across the table from me and we just started talking. Right. No idea who he was beforehand, anything. And all of a sudden we talk at least once a week now on business, but also personal things.
Yeah.
And likewise, right? So, I mean, it's just people kind of come into your life for a reason. And, so I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate you being vulnerable, because that's the type of leadership I feel like really invokes change, not the, person that's got everything together and drives off in a Lamborghini at the end of the day.
Well, rehab will humble you. And I've been twice, once for inpatient, once for outpatient, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a great experience. But in rehab, what I learned was when you meet somebody, it's, hey, I'm Tom. Hey, I'm Joe. What's up? How'd you get here? Tell me your story. It's not, hey, what do you do for a living? So I actually enjoyed those 30 days in rehab. I met 300 people, and it just gets pretty real pretty quick, and there was business owners that have 100 times what I've ever had as far as on paper assets, all that. And there was people that were half my age, twice my age. I mean, it was drugs and alcohol. They don't care what your bank account is. They don't care how old you are, how popular, how any successful. They don't. When you get into addiction, get down that rabbit hole, it's going to destroy everything. And I'll never forget one of the ladies sit next to me, and she goes, I just know my daughter said I should probably come here. I'm just drinking wine too much, I guess. But it was just so sweet. I'm sitting there going, she's such a sweet lady. And then you got just the different stories, though. And so my goal was also to bring that out of the rehab experience out of rehab, take away the stigma of rehab, and bring it into the everyday life of Joy Hour. And those conversations of, hey, you know what? I was great for a month, and actually today I'm not. Hey, I was great for a day, but I'm not doing so good. Real raw conversations that are really healing. When you talk things out, it truly does help, and you realize I'm not alone. That guy there just said he's sharing the same struggles, or that guy there had the same struggle last month, but he just shared some things with me that helped him through it. I'm gonna try that. Just no different than fitness, right? I've been 280 pounds down to 230 and everything in between many times. And, I can let myself go and eat French fries every day and be 280 like that and go, or I can go to the gym and eat better. It's a daily discipline that needs to happen. But sometimes I need a bro to say, hey, let's go to the gym. Hey, stop eating those French fries. And so whether it's food addictions, alcohol, drugs, any of those things, pretty much all of us are trying to live a better life than we did yesterday. And, rehab taught me, it doesn't matter what you did yesterday. It doesn't. That was yesterday. There's nothing you can do to change it. But as long as there's breath, there's hope. Let's talk about where you want to be tomorrow, ma'am, sir. And so when you lift me up, I lift you up. It's a back and forth relationship that's I want you to do good. But see what social media is doing so much of when people abuse it, it's the comparison. Well, he's doing better than me, and he's on vacation. I'm not. He got a nice car. I didn't. And so I must not be successful because that's what success is. And I got to look like that. And then it goes into depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts of I'm not good enough and I'm not successful. Everybody's life is important. And we need to speak into each other's lives and say, you're beautiful, you're handsome, you have potential. I know you fell down. Come on, I'm going to pick you up. Come here, I got you. And truly care about that person, even if you just met them and don't know their name hardly. We're supposed to love each other. We're supposed to care about each other. And if we start, manipulating and misusing each other, it's a disaster. But in the relationships that have come of the Joy Hour, the people that are coming around this concept of the culture of connection, how do we get better at what we're doing as humans, and it can't be done, through our devices. It's got to be real eye contact, real tears, real hugs. And like, if I'm saying, hey, I need to talk, like, can you give me the respect and listen? Because I need to talk. And do I give it to you when you do? I mean, I've gone to dinner with my wife and been the guy on the phone. Shame on me. I mean, I got a lot of issues. This is always a lifelong journey. But I think the more we talk about it and have these real, vulnerable, transparent conversations of, yesterday I didn't do so good. Today I'm going to do better. And then I'm going to do better again. Oop, I slipped. Oop, got back up. I'm going to do better. Atomic Habits was a great book. I love that study there. 1%. 1% better each day. So if I get 1% better at how I build relationships, eventually there's going to be almost too much work coming into the company. And in theory, maybe plenty of finances to take care of the stresses. But sometimes during those stresses and those financial challenges too, they develop those relationships that are way more valuable than anything else we can attain. There's not one person when they get to their last moment who's going to say anything other than, I wish I had more time with fill in the blank. Whatever that is. If I live every day with that on my mind, every couple hours or every moment I can, just thinking about, if it was my last day, what would I do? I'd turn this car around, I'd drive straight home and hug my wife and kids. That's what I would do. So when I get home, do I get home and do that? Or do I, hey, what's for dinner? Look at this. Oh yeah, kids, play your Xbox. Or do I talk? Do I actually listen? So much of the world right now is hurting because there's not enough time to have these investments of time together with each other. But ultimately, time is the thing that we can't control and we'll never get back. And we waste all these moments living for this future of retirement and $1 million and this is what it looks like. I have to get there. What are you doing today? Are you successful today? Did you treat your wife and your kids good today? Did you do the right thing today? Are you proud of yourself today? I mean, I want to keep it fresh and raw in people's minds. Like, I do not care again about what happened yesterday. You robbed a bank. Okay, you did drugs. I don't care. Like, what are you doing right now and why? And if you start to really be intentional with, this is why we're doing what I'm doing. I'm proud of myself. This is, work hard, sleep hard, but don't work so hard you ruin relationships. Don't work so hard that your kids are important people in your life are like, I don't even know who he is. He's successful on paper, but he's not present. He's not here. So I know we talked before we got on the show, but this whole Christmas carol, Christmas is coming up here soon, but I want to think about that often. The Ebenezer Scrooge story. You can gain the whole world financially and be successful with all the stuff, but when you look in the eye, that's why I asked myself, Tom, when I look in the mirror, am I proud of myself for what I did today? And my mind will tell me, yeah, good day. Or, that one phone call, Tom, you were a little too transactional and you forgot about a relationship. You need to call them back and ask for forgiveness. You need to make amends with that person. You lost your cool. Man, hey, Joe, earlier today, bro, you got a second? I was a jerk, man. Hey, bro, I'm sorry. Yeah, forget I was in the wrong. Love you, man. And now Joe and I are still tight. Because on my deathbed, am I going to say, I got $1,000 out of Joe? Yeah, I worked one over on him. I did the deal. Am I going to do that? Or am I going to say, I messed up. I said something wrong. I'm going to fix it. So making amends is such a key part. The whole 12 steps are just phenomenal. I think every human that's over the age of 20 or even 15 should rehab. Like rehab themselves, not necessarily go to rehab, but rehab was so much more not about drugs and alcohol. It was about anger, bitterness, resentment, jealousy, comparison. Why should I compare myself to anybody else, what they have or don't have? Like, I got 2 legs, I got 3 kids at home. I'm alive. Like, isn't that enough? Like, I don't need to compare myself to anybody. I don't care what you say. If that's success to you, then cool. To me, I don't need that. But what success is to me is when my wife looks at me and says, Tom, for the first time in 20 years, I truly feel like you're the spiritual leader of our home. I feel like you're the father to our children, and I love you. And after all her and I've been through, it's a whole nother conversation. But what I did through all my addiction and stuff, our marriage is better now at 20 years than it ever has been. And that's taken some personal work on Tom so that I'm not going, it's his fault. No, my choices and what I do. But I do plan to continue to live transparent and vulnerable, be around people like you and your wife, what you all are doing. I don't want to dive into too many other people's stories, but I admire. I see what you guys do with, there's a local food bank that you talk about and support. I think that's phenomenal what's happened there. Of course, I mentioned Mission Outdoors, but don't ever change, man. Don't ever change. It's the things that when we are a long, long time from now, hopefully, on that deathbed, so to speak, we should be able to go, I made some mistakes, but overall, I'm pretty proud of the life I lived. And that's what my dad did. I learned a lot from him. And he talked a lot as he had about 3 months left. And he always said, I want one more time with my kids. I love my wife. God, I love you. I thank you for my life. And wasn't anything else. Nothing with houses or money or businesses or stuff he owned. It was one more time with my family.
Were you an addict when he was alive then? Like, I mean, when did you, looking back, when did you have a problem?
Yeah, good question. So I got married 20 years ago. I was 25 years old. Sober as can be, nothing for about 15. I partied when I was 18, 19, 20. Got clean from everything at 22. 25 years old, met my wife, got married. Was clean, get nothing for like 15 years. Was youth leader, working with kids. I'm not saying I was perfect. I always have issues. I'm a human. Everybody has issues. But no addictions and no drugs or alcohol. And then about 10 years ago, Mike's Hard Lemonade turned into IPA, whiskey, wine. And about 6 years ago, cocaine, other things during that. But the last year of his life was probably my worst. That was about 5 years ago. Steroids, alcohol, cocaine every day. Microdosing during the day to kind of keep it together, and then off the rails at the evening and weekends. But it was every 2 hours. I was whiskey, cocaine all day, every day, and miserable and yet functional very highly. I'd go to church, go to work. I hit it. Nobody knew for years, and if they knew at all, they thought it was just a little bit. Product right here all the time. I'm driving with whiskey in my passenger seat like it was nothing. I had it all together, man. Never got pulled over, never got a DUI, never had a car accident. Marriages together, got a 6,000 square foot house with a pool, 7 cars. Man, life's good. Let's just keep buying stuff, and landing deals left and right, and just crazy there for a couple of years. And but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, that last year, and of course that was kind of, I guess, a cover-up in a way where people thought, leave Tom alone, he's just grieving, he lost his best friend, his dad, just give him some time, I'm like, yeah, that's about that much of it. Most of it's, I'm not the man I'm supposed to be. I had so much guilt and shame, and my mom would come to the house sometimes, and she'd be looking at my wife and my kids as we're having dinner, and she's like, you're such a good husband, Tom. You're such a good father. And I'm sitting there going, oh, God, when am I ever going to tell the world, tell my loved ones, like, I'm not doing good. I'm literally, like, in hell right now. Like, this is not, and it just consumed me so much. And just, I had to move so fast all the time. Work, eat, sleep, go, working 80 hours a week, just no eye contact with anybody. Just, I'm fine. Everything's good. And it was nuts. I was high as a kite at my dad's funeral, but I don't know. I'd say most people didn't know. I could pull it over, I guess, and that was the idea: manipulation and denial. But hell, it was miserable. Yeah.
So, you gradually just got into that just because you wanted more and more and more of that. What was, I mean, because most of the time that's filling the void of something. There's something there that you're trying to self-medicate, right? And I know I've done a lot of like digging and reading and educating myself on just how the mind works, and the addictive personality is just that, right? And you can aim at certain directions,
Right.
and if you're not in the right direction, that's when it becomes disastrous.
Huge shout out to Zekin. They are doing amazing things to help us, and they will help you. For more information, hit here.
Right, and I've seen, but also like with, on the good side where maybe it's for business,
Right.
That can take your life too, right? I mean, so it's finding that balance. But was it just like, hey, this feels good, and so I want to keep going, and you just have to do more and more and more to have that same feeling? Were you kind of chasing that, or was there something underneath that you felt you were trying to?
Now you got to make me get real. Rob, I've ran from my calling for a long time, and didn't feel qualified, didn't feel I was supposed to. God told me at a young age, and pretty much continuously, not on the notes, I was a youth leader 20-something years ago for 5 years. And it wasn't the Sundays that I got up and taught. It wasn't the times people said, oh, we got a great youth leader at our church. It was times that picked up this one young man many times because he needed a ride. And only he and I had those conversations, but I was the only one, I guess, that gave him a hug and told him I love him, and I think he had potential, and spoke into his life. And I knew his dad. It made me frustrated to think, man, his dad from the outside looks great, but his son says he never hugs him, he never says he loves him, he never tells him he's got potential. And what's wrong with this world? And so I had 70, 80 teenagers through those years come through. And I think I made a difference. I think that some of those young people have felt worthy and felt valued and felt important. Maybe it's prevented a overdose or a suicide. I don't know. But I'm called to be a man of God, a minister, to do service work, to talk with people, to let them know that they're important, they're handsome, they're valued, they're loved, they're respected. And so the worst choice of my life was 15 years ago. Sat in a parking lot in Bellevue. And I chose not to be the youth leader anymore because I wanted to build my career. So I went to the pastor and said, I'm done. I can't do both. I'm too busy. And from that day on, I had a God-sized void in my life that I wasn't doing anything that meant anything worth anything at all. So I made it about 5 years with my only addiction being work. Made millions of dollars. Bought the house, the cars, owned the apartment buildings, owned restaurants. And then about 5 years after quitting the youth, that would put me about 35 years old. I was mowing my lawn, mad that all I did was work and make money. When I got gas for the lawnmower, and I got a Mike's Hard Lemonade. The next week I got 2. Next week I got more. I lived that life for quite a while until I had whiskey, IPA. Love the taste of those things, man. They go down just like Gatorade. Just... But no, my addiction is 100% running from the call of God in my life. And now that he's in the right place, in my heart, in my life, and I talk to him every day, I know my identity has nothing to do with Tom and his money, his construction company, and any of that stuff. I know that I'm walking in God's will, and I have peace and joy like I've never had before because I use every bit of energy and resources that I can to speak into not just teenagers, but to anybody's life to try to make a difference because that's what it is. I mean, the best story is probably Jonah and the whale in the Bible. You know, God said, Jonah, go to Nineveh to talk to my people. And Jonah said, I ain't going to Nineveh, I'm going to Tarshish. So he got on the ship. As the story goes, he ended up getting thrown overboard in the belly of the whale. The belly of the whale for me was rehab. And it was not pretty, not fun, but it was rehab. It was nasty inside the belly of the whale. So Jonah gets spit out of the whale and gets another chance. He's on the shore going, okay, God, I'm going to go to Nineveh. I'm going to do what you told me to do when I was a young man. So Tom Lyman, yeah, I tried going to Tarshish on the ship with all the bright and shiny, successful things of this world. And then went to rehab and found God, my higher power. And life's pretty great now. I'm walking back in my calling and purpose of being vulnerable, being transparent, and hoping that at least one life will change. And if that's one life a day that I'm involved with, cool. If that's one a year, I don't know. I do know there's stories and people that I'll bring in at some point that'll share their stories. I know of one family that's completely doing 1,000,000 times better because of coming to a class that we teach 8 times in a row on a Monday. He drove 2 hours to come to our behavioral changes. So it's it's drug and alcohol course, but it's all about behavioral changes. And then the next one's anger management. So there's 18 different courses in this curriculum that we use. And man, he was sober. I mean, he was alcoholic. His life was falling apart, and already there's a night and day difference. And so, although it's not being the youth leader like it was 20 years ago, it's a young man that's younger than I am. I was able to speak into his life, and so I just want to be a tool, to be used of God in those ways. So I don't know if that answered the question. I don't know where all that came from, but I needed to get it out.
I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
Well, no, I mean, there's knowing where you came from is one thing. Projecting that where you are now is one thing.
Right.
And then projecting that into the future is another thing. And so I understand the addiction side of it. I've had family members we've helped with addiction. Sounds bad to say it this way, but it's fascinating because the human mind, there's so many things that it does. People don't even know. It's just like this operating system, right? And so sometimes it's hard to do that hard reset.
Right.
You know, I was diagnosed with PTSD because of the events of my mom's passing, and I had no idea what that was. I just wasn't right. And so you could see, working with Ryan at Mission Outdoors, the conversations he had. It doesn't matter if you're a military guy that saw your friend get blown up next to you, or you watch your mom take her last breath in a very eventful, non-peaceful way of passing. It still messes you up, right? And so as I work through that, as I turn inward to help myself and learn, because that's just how my mind works, it's like I need to know why, I need to know how. And it was so profound enough to where, like, okay, that there's pain there, and pain can be used either way, right? So addiction, I'm going to cover it up, I'm going to drink, I'm going to do drugs because I want to dull that pain. or
Yeah.
I'm going to use it for good. And even though it might be painful to relive it and share that, I know that there's a benefit, that high that you get from the drugs and alcohol is helping other people,
Right.
pouring into other people and being vulnerable and leading, right? So that's why, even though it's not easy for me to talk about PTSD because it's bringing back memories, I've recovered from that. I've gone through counseling, I've gone through therapy, I've gone through all that stuff and educated myself, but also had help.
Right.
I couldn't have done it without help. I also couldn't have done it without my wife. Couldn't have done it without a friend that's like, hey, you need help?
Yeah.
Because they saw it, right? And all the same reasons, it's very similar, right? You do all these things. And so there's that fork in the road, I guess, if you will. Like, I can either go this direction and try to dull the pain,
Right.
or I can go down this direction, which is not potentially very good, or I can straighten myself out, right?
Right.
And so that's the choice I made. And so, everyone has that kind of moment, and for some people that might be like, wow, that was horrible. Other people are like, yeah, I saw my dad take his life right in front of me. I mean, there's all these different things but it doesn't really matter. It's still an event. It's still trauma in your brain, and the brain's always looking for a way to fix it. It's trying to level out.
Right.
And so that's, in my opinion, that's how the drugs and alcohol start kicking in, because it takes that away, it takes that pain away.
Right.
There's a guy, well, his name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. But a lot of what I've done a lot of research on him, and he's an amazing person. His story from just healing his body with just his mind, and talking about, if I'm going to have this amazing future that I want and I hope for and I pray for, the person I am now, that pathway to get from here to there, I can't take all this negative stuff from the past. I have to heal myself. So I can't go any further until I start dumping some of this baggage and this weight. And sometimes you do that on your own, other times you need help, right? And so that's the servant leadership that I saw, is, hey, this is what's happened. So people are always looking for connection, back to the connection thing that you're talking about. If you have connection, if you feel like someone understands, just one person in this world understands the feeling that you have and thoughts that you have, you're not alone.
Right.
And that's why I feel like it's so critical to have a place like Joy Hour, a space like Joy Hour, and a brain trust like Joy Hour. And I think, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, but, because Joy Hour was every Wednesday, and now it's not because of the facility, I feel like, and this is me going through even my past events, like something that seems really devastating, like, I can't do this now. How can I help people? Well, now we're having a conversation on camera that is going to be put out in front of not just 80, 90, 150 people, but potentially thousands of people all over the world that can be consumed and seen 24/7, 365, right? Would we have done this at some point? Maybe, but if you're busy working and then you have Joy Hour and you have to make sure you have food, and we're doing that and we're helping those people, that's great, but I don't know if it would really have grown. And obviously it's growing, but would it be to this scale? We don't know what the outcome of this is going to be. Right. But there's going to be one person out there that's like, everything is connecting, everything is hitting and makes sense, and I want to pour in, I want to be part of it, how do I help, right? So that's the hope. That's why I wanted to do this. That's why I wanted to be here. That's why I want, I'm a fan of you. I'm a fan of who you are now and who you're becoming. In a way, I also love the Tom that was back there. Right? Because that Tom you needed that in order to have this vision, right? You need to have that pain in order to become the person you are. And so for me, my goal is, I want to, like, when my mom was passing, the last thing I was thinking of is, paying the mortgage and car and power and everything else. It's just, you become numb when you're in that situation. And still made the payments, but I have no idea how I managed day in and day out during that process. I also spent a lot of time with my mom going to cancer treatment because I was her eyes and ears and her advocate. You need an advocate. And when she's drugged up or not feeling well or whatever, she needs someone to take the notes and ask the questions. And, you know, so I was very involved in her treatment. And, you know, what I want to have come of that is like, okay, it was horrible and it was 13 years ago. And some of my friends have like, dude, I mean, people die. Like, get over it, right? It's your mom, but it was profound enough to where it changed me and changed my trajectory to where what I'm doing now is setting the foundation to where I want to help people that are going through treatment. There's a lot of causes, there's a lot of events, there's a lot of charities that are for cancer research. I think that still needs to happen. But what about the people that are in the trenches, just like you, are in the trenches with these people trying to help? What about the families that, again, we help people get into homes, but many of these families, there's two incomes that are needed in order to make that payment. So what happens if one of those two gets sick and can't work? What happens if their child gets cancer and they're having to take time off of work to take them to treatment to save their life? So my goal, what I'm trying to do, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, all I know is I'm not going to stop because that's in honor of my mom, is I want to help people during that time while you're fighting for that. Is like, let us cover your mortgage payment or a percentage of your mortgage payment. Let's have, you know, that event. And I feel like with movement, I've been told no countless times because there's other things that we have on the plate. There's only so much capacity. No knock against them. They see the value, but I think that's, I'm thinking bigger than just, okay, movement. I'm thinking something that, okay, if they can't do it or the liability or whatever, then I need to find my own way. Right? So I have to create something. So I say all that because it's like we're constantly being reshifted, constantly in the belly of that whale being spit out over here because we're not going the right direction. It's God telling us, hey, get back over here, right? And that might be, you might look at it as a setback, but it's also something that I think it's like, no, I'm just bringing you back in line with where you need to be so we can get this done. Right. So I realize that in what I'm trying to do, the only way I'm going to be able to actually do that is leaning on other people and helping other people achieve their goals to where they see the value in what I'm trying to do.
Well, I definitely see it, and it stuck with me earlier, a comment you said of pain. And, you know, although we've known each other a long time, man, I learned a little bit more about you right there and your mom. And 13 years still feels like yesterday, doesn't it? And that's a real feeling. My dad was about 7 years ago, and there's times I'm fine. There's times everybody goes through these processes differently, but out of your pain comes a purpose. Do you cover it up with options that numb the pain, like you said? Or do you dive into, you know what, I made it through. There's other people right now today in hospital rooms struggling. There's moms and daughters that are with moms. There's sons that are with dads. There's husbands with wives. And they can't, like you said, put food on the table for a month or two. It's not like their whole life's been like that. I mean, we have different pain that we've been through to reach into different people's lives to have more of that purpose. And that's how most, nonprofits start. That's how a lot of ministries blossom is, I've been through something. Like my wife's, I mean, her whole group is called Betrayed Wives. She's getting her master's degree next month for counseling. She's talking to ladies all over the country, 30, 40 hours a week probably. She's putting into Zoom calls and counseling women that are in the throes of adultery, unfaithfulness, whatever you want to call it, with their spouse. And she's like, hey, and she does what she does. She's put a lot of time into that. But I'd encourage you, man, that's the first I've heard of you opening up on that. I'd encourage you, don't ever give up. And if that's what, is on your heart, that's if it's on your mind and your heart, that's what God's saying is, do you have a job, nothing wrong with a job, and you can be passionate about your job, and if that's not your identity, it's not Rob is mortgage, you know. Rob's a lot more than just mortgage. Tom's a lot more than just construction, right? And so we allow our lives to be used in a way where it's like we've been through some stuff, and instead of just saying, nah, and not talking about it, we're going to do the opposite and talk about it. I'd encourage you at every opportunity you can to be vocal with what you felt during those weeks and months and those visits at the hospital. And I know that, you know, we go through these things to be vocal with them. And, you know, you never know. I've had so many times I'm talking to somebody here about whatever, my story or some addiction thing. And they're like, okay, and then the conversation's over. And all of a sudden, this person over here is like, hey, you got a minute? Mm-hmm. And then you touch their life and you're like, wow, if I wouldn't have been texting, hey, he didn't seem interested and he left, but okay, but you're not going to get anything if you don't talk. And of course, if you don't listen. And so we need to communicate. And this isn't talking and listening and telling everybody, you know, life's great. I mean, life is meant to be.
Yeah. I have you know, I've been pretty vocal. I mean, for the longest, I mean, it was years. I couldn't even say mom without tearing up and breaking down. I mean, it was trauma.
I know, yeah.
You know, and so, but I realized that, okay, it's, the way I look at it is it's selfish if I keep that pain bottled up and I don't use it to help other people through it. And so I had a client that, you know, helped her get into a home, but we became friends again very quickly because we were vulnerable. She was actually going through cancer treatment, or she was actually just emerged from cancer, and so she was moving out of state, trying to get just better situation for her. Mm-hmm. And she called me up. I remember we were driving home. It was Friday night. It was like 8:00 at night, and she called about. I forgot what she originally called about, and I could tell that there was just something off. I'm like, "Are you okay?" And then she just broke down.
Yeah.
And I felt like she trusted me enough, like she could open up and actually say what's going on. And she had some tests done, and it didn't look good, like it was coming back. And her partner just broke up with her because couldn't handle the treatment side of it again. So. She broke down and poured her heart out, and it was horrible. Like I was having, it was horrible for her. I was having all these memories that I had I didn't realize I'd shoved away. But I mean, that's part of PTSD is you start shoving some stuff away because it's a way for you to survive. And you know, she's talking about, you know, I had hair down to my butt and it was gorgeous, and I'm going to lose all that, and I'm going to be ugly, I'm going to be deformed and mutilated and all these things. It's breast cancer. That's how my mom had breast cancer. And I had the exact same conversation with my mom. Mm-hmm. And so I shared that, and I said, those are, I mean, that's a natural thing to feel. And I don't understand because I'm not personally going through it, but what you're feeling is not alone. So I shared everything my mom said and the conversations we had. And I felt like I helped her through that.
Right.
But it was so hard. I mean, hung up and I just lost it. Because I was just trying to stay strong for that entire time. And I'm like, you know, that hit really hard. And you know, we're still friends. I mean, it's a different level of relationship and trust. And it's not just the transaction of, yeah, I did an amazing job getting you in the house.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what I'm supposed to do, though, right? It's like, but we're friends, and I care about you, right? And we do that with all of our, you know, I say clients, but I mean, we want to build relationships because that's what we're about. And we share our missions and you know, working with us and how you're actually, you know, by working with us, you're helping other people. And so it's just, that's why we're here. At the end of the day is just to love other people and help them. And it's not always pretty. And, you know, but one of the best, you know, teachers, I mean, back to the whole pain thing is, you know, it can teach you something for sure. But, you know, it's selfish if you keep it bottled up and like, there's no ego here, right? We got to check the ego because ego isn't helping anyone, including myself or you. right? So that's going back to the original question. Like, hey, I saw that, like that. Like, okay, this guy's genuine because he didn't have to say that. I mean, he's a business owner. He probably does very well. I saw the truck. But no, that's not what we were talking about. We were talking about, hey, I screwed up, but this is what I'm doing to make everything right. And at some day with my goal, there's footage of a MMA fighter, and I forgot his name, and he had just won, but he was like an underdog, and it's like I saved it. It was on Instagram. And after the fight, he's going back to the locker room. He calls his mom. He's like, hey, we did it. And it's like, at some point, I want to say, hey, we did it.
There you go.
So.
He will, man. Yeah. He will. And you already are by just voicing it today. Being vulnerable is the strongest thing to ever do. Just be real, man. Sure. I mean, so much of this, like, image thing of, I can't express or show my feelings because if I do, nobody cares anyhow because everybody's about themselves. And that's not really the case, In the rat race, sure, but in tight circles, I do a lot with AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery, the 12-step program, and when it gets to the small groups in the circle, it's always this. It's, hey, I'm Tom, and what I choose to say is, hey, I'm Tom. I'm in recovery from addiction. I'm always vulnerable. Instead of saying, hey, I'm Tom, I'm a current addict. I'm not actually a current addict, so it's just my way of saying it. But you can say whatever you want. Hey, I'm Tom, I'm an addict. But then I say, whatever I want for 5 minutes. And when I'm done, everybody says, thank you for sharing. The first few times I did this, Rob, I'm like, what kind of garbage is this? Waste of time. And but I kept coming back. That's the other thing NA says is bring it in, like big old hugs, keep coming back. There's no judgment, nothing. It's a brotherhood. It's a family. It's a AA and NA phenomenal program. Celebrate Recovery, phenomenal program. But they taught me a lot about being there for each other. But when you share and you get done, and we all say, thank you for sharing, instead of us cross-talking, going, Rob, what you should do for your grief, what you should really do, you should read this book, instead of doing that, I say, thank you for sharing. So you're like, wow, how does that work? But it does. I promise you it works. And so how it works, too, is when this person shares and that person, and next week and next month, you hear other people's stories, you're like, oh, good night. Oh, man, ooh, I got it pretty good. That's a crazy story. You don't say that, but you realize, like, everybody's going through something. Yeah. Just not everybody's talking about it because a lot of people are fine, but they're not fine until, So, yeah, small groups, 12 steps, all those things. AA started 91 years ago with Bill and Bob talking just like this. Real talk. Hey, I'm struggling, and how you doing? And that's what we're meant to do is, iron sharpens iron, talking and going through things. But I'm so glad that we met. I know our relationship's just going to blossom from here. I truly admire everything you're doing. Just excited where this can continue to go. I know this won't be our last time to do a podcast show. But one of my favorite sayings that I did not come up with, it was passed on to me, but it's, I slept and I dreamt that life was joy. I woke and I realized life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. And so there is this feeling that is irreplaceable. And when you're selfless, you actually get rewarded by going, I felt pretty good about opening the door for that lady. I felt pretty good about letting that guy in on traffic today. Wasn't that hard? I was selfless instead of being selfish. Me, get out of my way, every man for himself. And I don't want to live in that world, and I can't, you and I can't go out and tomorrow change everybody's perspective, but hopefully by doing this, we can impact some people and say, slow down, pause, take some time for yourself, shut your phone off, value each other, respect each other, from the person cleaning the toilets to the attorney to the politician to the contractor, everybody in between. There shouldn't be any of this.
Right.
We're humans. We're trying. we're failing, we're getting up. We're falling, we get back up. If we can't get us up, somebody helps us up. And when we're up, then we help somebody up. It's pretty simple. But
Well, if you and I are both made in God's image, and He's made in God's image, and that person that just cut you off in traffic is God, why would you?
mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's a simple shift of thought.
Right.
It's like, and forgiveness is that's that you have to have compassion and forgiveness, and you can't carry that forward. And so, I mean, it's hard sometimes, right? Because it's like you don't want anyone to do you wrong, but at the end of the day, you don't know where they're coming from either, right? So you just have to have that mindset, and it takes time, takes training, practice for sure. But there's a saying that I heard that it resonates with me because sometimes I feel like we're maybe on islands, right? But for people that are listening to this, that have a story that if what we're saying is kind of resonating, there's the saying is, or the quote is, people like us don't have people. We're the people that people have.
That's good.
Right? So it's puts it in perspective, like not everyone's going to understand where we're coming from because they haven't gone through what we've gone through. Sure. But there's people that are out there that we're going to be able to help. That's going to help someone else. That's going to help someone else. So we have to have that. It's okay if they don't understand.
Right.
But there's still people out there that need us.
That's good. Yeah. Absolutely. And I just look forward to doing more of these. We'll schedule something, but getting into more of a deeper discussion too about the way the brain works and addiction too. I'm fascinated by it as well. Yeah. And I believe that we can be addicted to the right thing, and life is awesome. Be addicted to love, be addicted to service work and being kind and all those things we talked about. Nothing wrong with addiction. You just don't be addicted to the wrong thing. If this is a milkshake and I drink 1,000 a day, I'm not gonna be too healthy in a month.
Right.
You gotta look out for me, bro. Like just kombucha today.
Yeah. Put down the fries.
Put down the fries. Yeah. Exactly. But as long as there's breath, there's hope, and there are people, hopefully, that are gonna see this, and they might be at a time in their life where I was, and I know you've mentioned things where I'm sure you had this, was you didn't see hope that day, that moment. It was a dark place of like, what's this all about? Like, you're just in the forest and there is no way out. You've tried and you've walked every direction, but you're stuck and you're just done. And we want to, with this podcast and everything we do with Joy Hour and the others that we partner with, continue to speak hope. And just as long as there's breath, there's hope. Don't matter what happened yesterday. Where do you want to be tomorrow? That's what matters. Where do you want to change your trajectory of your life? And here's some tools and some people that can guide and talk. Nobody can hope or wish or pray or force somebody to get sober. A person has to want to. And you're right. There's certain times this will impact somebody, and certain times we'll be like, what's that podcast about? But, reaching for people that are going through things in life and saying, as a Joy Hour movement, we're creating a culture of connection, and we're here for each other. You've been there for me, and hope you can say the same.
Yeah.
All right.
Likewise, man. I appreciate it. All right.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.